You're listening to the Right Mindset podcast with Racquel Henry. This is episode 2. This podcast is produced by my writing studio, Writers Atelier. I'm an author, editor, writing coach, and part-time professor who believes that mindset work is the cornerstone for writing success. Hi all. Here comes an emotional message. This is actually going to be pretty similar to the newsletter that I send out. So if you would prefer to read it, you can also sign up for our newsletter, or you can find it on our blog. And it's writersatelier.com/blog. If you all have been on this journey with us, then you know that since the news came that our studio space was going to be torn down, things have kind of been in a whirlwind. But I want to tell you a story. I decided that I wanted to share what the journey was like. So pull up a chair and get comfortable. So this was indeed quite the bumpy ride. And I don't just mean running the studio was a bumpy ride, because that's kind of a given when you're an entrepreneur. You just, you're going to be, it's going to be a rocky road. And in fact, running the studio is really more of an intense kind of travel. But what I mean, the entire process of finding a new home for the studio has been one of the hardest battles I've had to fight. And it may seem dramatic when you're looking in, but when you've poured every single ounce of your soul, and I mean every single ounce, it can feel like, kind of like the end of the world. So when the news came about the building being torn down, I sat for roughly 10 months with a continuous ringing in my ear. And that's kind of what it felt like. And it was like I could hear our community and our friends and our audience saying, they support us. And the truth was I really couldn't hear you because that ringing was so loud. And in fact, it grew so loud that I started to wonder if maybe this meant it was time for me to give up. And I almost did. I kept wondering to myself, was it a sign? Was this what I wanted to do for the rest of my life? Maybe this was not my calling. And sometimes maybe dreams don't work out. So I cried. And you guys know how hard it is for me to admit that, because I'm not really a crier. But I did, and then I cried some more. And then I prayed. I looked for more signs. I ranted. And side note here, forever indebted to the Writers Atelier team and my family on that one. My work life suffered. And I remember there were so many days I couldn't concentrate. I flip-flopped. Don't give up. Give up. Don't give up. Give up. And it's not like, good things didn't happen during that time period. There were definitely good moments, but those good moments only came about because I knew how to work on my thoughts. I learned how to manage thoughts. And I couldn't stop the building from being torn down, but I could control the way I viewed the situation. And so I made a continuous effort to redirect my thinking. Again, not without a lot of venting. I'm not even going to pretend like I didn't do that. And I did a lot of soul searching last year. And deep down, I knew that this was a sign that it was time for me to move to the next level. So the current studio space was always really meant to be a starter space. And if you hang around the community, I always talk about, my plans for Writers Atelier as a whole, and they are much bigger than what we're currently doing. And so one of my goals, though, was to make it a home for writers. And I think it became just that. Our community became really more of a family, and the studio became a place where we gathered to write together and perfect our craft. And though Writer's Atelier was in existence before we started the brick and mortar part of it, it really came alive in that little Winter Park studio. That's, I think, why, the moving on part was so hard. But, there was always something that I kept repeating day after day, despite that sort of haze that I was in. And that phrase was that something must work out. I let it spin in my head pretty much over and over and over again. And that phrase also helped something else to emerge. And that was my buried belief. This one belief has been there really since day one. I just needed to remember it. And it was the belief in the work I was doing. There is often so much that stifles this belief sometimes, but somehow or another, it always seems to rise above everything else. I really should learn my lesson by now, but I'm really an overthinker by nature. And again, if you hang around me, you probably know that too. But I went back to the why, and I recalled and summoned all those mindset principles that I drill into everyone else, and reminded myself that everything happens for a reason. And so I fought and fought and then fought some more. And then I got super serious about finding a space. The current studio had really fallen into my lap. I tell that story all the time. And so I thought, surely I could do this again. I can make this happen again. And I told myself, if we didn't find a place by the deadline, then maybe we'd be homeless for a little bit. And I made a list of backup plans. Also, bless our admin, Megan, who immediately sent me a list of temporary fixes as well. And ultimately, I figured I wouldn't be me if I didn't at least go down without a fight. I had to at least try. So the process of looking for a space was draining, uncomfortable, and honestly, it required so much time. And there were a few times where I thought a space might work, and then it ended up not working out. And actually, some very woo-woo things happened as well, because, you can't listen to an episode of this podcast without me talking about woo-woo moments. And I had visited one space that wasn't ideal, but it could work as a place to land. It was actually just down the street from the current studio, and even though it was a little bit smaller, we would be able to run most of our usual programming. But something felt a little bit off about it, and I noticed it like the second I stepped foot in it. And I'm a huge believer of gut reactions, but this space was also the right price. And when I mentioned it to others, even my parents actually went to see all the spaces with me. Everyone said, go for it. Like, where are you ever going to find another place like that? And so I thought, okay, if this space is really the one, then, nothing will get in the way of it. I kept kind of waiting for a block, but really there was nothing. So I got all the way to the point where I was on my way to sign the lease and put down the deposit. And I called the property manager just to ask, oh, how would you want the deposit? And long story short, they told me a more suitable tenant was going to rent multiple offices in the building. And so I'd be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed at this point. But again, that was, exactly what I asked for. I had prayed that if this wasn't the right space, then something should stop me. And, well, there it was. So after that, another space I was serious about pursuing became available. And again, it wasn't ideal, but, it was better than the last. And I didn't have that exact same, off feeling I did with the first, but my gut wasn't, totally sure. I figured I was being unreasonable though, maybe even like too picky, because I again overthinker. And so this space was, it was a good size, and I got excited because they were going to put in the kind of flooring I wanted, and they were going to paint the walls white, and it was going to be on brand for Writers Atelier. And so the property manager emailed the lease and application right away. And now here comes the woo woo part. When I responded to her email and I told her I still had one more space to view, the email bounced back. I'm not even lying. I'm not kidding. The return message actually said, your email to X being the property manager, has been blocked. I was stunned. This was the same email. I had been emailing her on this email the entire time. And so I tried again. I sent the message back again, and I got the same message in response. And so I thought, okay, universe. That wasn't the one either. So enter the last place I had on my schedule. It was a place that a friend by the name of Kimbrett suggested. Her friend actually owned one of the businesses in the plaza, and there was a for rent sign there. And so I knew the plaza, but I was still skeptical. It was a retail space, and retail tends to be a little bit higher in price point. And I just didn't know. But, to cut a long story short, I went to go see the place, and truly it was really out of our budget. So when I mentioned it to the owner, she said, well, I do have a smaller space that will be available next month if you want to look at it. So I thought, okay, why not? Let me just look. So I followed her around the corner of the plaza, and there it was. Our future studio space. It was in the same plaza, only it faced one of the main roads. And, really from that moment on, things kind of just started falling into place. The gut feeling, the price range, the application process, everything kind of just seemed to align. And before I knew it, I was handing her a check and signing a new lease. And just like that, a new space had fallen into my lap, which was exactly the thing I asked for. So I had been holding my breath for 10 months and finally, now I feel like I can breathe. I signed the lease on Monday. And if you're listening to this later on, Monday of this week, and today's Friday. So if you didn't believe in my woo-woo moments, I hope this will make you a believer now. Because the day I signed that lease was the same day I started cleaning out old photos on my phone. My phone actually gets very full because I love taking pictures and screenshots. Don't judge me. But I was going through the old photos, and, there in a sea of all my memories and reminders was a photo of our new studio space. Now, I think you're probably thinking, so what? You took a picture, big deal. No. This picture was dated November 21st, 2018. The day before my birthday 1 year ago. I had no idea why I even took this photo. But there was a picture of the studio space on my phone from a year ago. And, if that isn't the law of attraction at work, I don't know what is. We'll talk a little bit more about the law of attraction later on, but I knew then that I had made the right decision. Every single thing that had happened on this journey led me to this point. And there's no way I'd be where I am right now if I didn't have the knowledge that the mind is the most powerful tool we have. And again, deep down, I kind of always knew something would work out. I honestly don't think that I could have gotten this far if I didn't believe that. So if you stick around, again, if you stick around with us on this podcast, I'm going to, dive deeper into those kinds of things. So I don't want to pretend like this is just like, oh, it's a magical thing. And, we are all set. We're perfect. The studio is never going to have another challenge ever again. No, no. The studio is definitely not where I want it. And, we still have a war to fight. But right now, it feels like we've won a battle. And I'm going to let that sink in and just kind of let it be good for now. So, local folks, I cannot wait for you to see it. If you're not local, be on the lookout for updates because we're going to post pictures, of course, on all of our social platforms. Um, and I know this was kind of a bit of an unconventional episode, but I kind of felt called to share the journey, especially the parts about how things sort of just lined up, because that's truly what it means to get into alignment. And I'll have an episode on that later on. But that is like the prime example. And even though it's hard to remember, the biggest thing I learned was to just follow my gut and, trust the process. So thank you guys so much, as always, for listening. And if you're enjoying the Right Mindset podcast, I encourage you to subscribe and leave us a review. You can also check out Writers Atelier at writersatelier.com or on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. And if you are interested in joining our membership, you can do that through Patreon. All right. Thanks a lot again, guys, and can't wait to talk to you more about mindset work. Take care and happy writing life.